Hi guys, Ali Doucette here, and today I wanted to talk about Saturn and Jupiter and the conjunction that's going on right now. I talked about it a couple of days ago, but I just discovered something really interesting about the cycle that I wanted to bring to our attention because it seemed really, really relevant, both personally and like when we look at the context of the bigger world. So I'll pull up my chart really fast. I mentioned that right now Saturn is exact the north node. And and look, and it's like right there, conjunct Venus as well. This is a big deal. And just this morning I sat there and I thought, well, how often does this really happen? I was like doing the math in my mind. Like Saturn is on this 29-year cycle. Uh, the north node is on this the 18-year cycle. And anyway, it turns out that the reality is we get Saturn conjunct the North Node about every 12 years, 11 to 12 years. And so, as I was researching about this, I found this really interesting article where this person pointed out that this cycle of conjunctions, they call it a synodic cycle, where Saturn and the North Node are meeting every 11 to 12 years. What else happens every 11 to 12 years? You probably don't know off the top of your head, but I do. It's the Jupiter cycle. Jupiter takes about 11 to 12 years to go all the way around the zodiac. And so this author contended that this cycle of Saturn conjunct the North Node highlights the relationship between Saturn and Jupiter. And I had not really thought about it in those terms before, but Saturn and Jupiter are kind of like complementary opposites, right? Jupiter is all about expansion, and Saturn is all about contraction, and Jupiter is going to be really optimistic, and uh, Saturn is going to be a little bit more pessimistic. Where Jupiter is excited, Saturn is not. Saturn is more solemn. Where Jupiter is, it can be a little bit prone to exaggeration. Uh, Saturn is definitely really grounded in realism. And where Jupiter, like financially speaking, Jupiter is all about excess, and if there's going to be a profligate spender on in the zodiac, it's going to be like Venus and Jupiter, and Saturn is the opposite of that. Saturn is the one that's going to say, yeah, it's time to stick to the budget. And I thought that this was a really interesting dynamic to be coming into play right now, especially as we're seeing in the US, like massive attempts at budget cuts, massive, and the budget cuts, I was thinking like on a, global level, but I'm definitely seeing budget cutting in, I don't know, my own life, in everybody's life. Like everybody right now seems to be feeling that Saturn vibe of it's time to contract. We've had a bunch of expansion, and now it's time to contract. So the thing that I was thinking about today is that nobody really enjoys contraction, I don't think. Like, I think many of us would like for things to keep growing and growing forever. And actually, now that I'm talking about this, okay, I have to read this to you, but I have to find it. I texted it to my little brother. But it was a concept that kind of like blew my mind because I haven't thought about it that way. Oh my gosh, could you hear that? Hey, stop, take off your roller skates in the house. No more. Okay, let me find it. Okay, buckle up, guys. I don't even know the original author of this. It's just something that I found on the internet. It was like a screenshot when I found it. Okay, it says, as long as the ruling class preserves the credibility of the institutions, the system works. Managerial liberalism turned experts into a new priestly caste, with one difference. This priesthood could actually make it rain. As long as the economy grew and the promises were kept, no one questioned the myth of neutral expertise. All the boats were rising. Why complain? Unfortunately for the liberal order, human beings are predictably flawed. Institutions were never truly neutral, and the experts were never truly infallible. Over time, the ruling class got greedy. They stretched their credibility to justify wars and push social engineering, even when it clearly was not in the public interest. As their grip on power tightened, they grew bolder. Those who ran the system began treating institutional trust as a political currency to be spent. They traded legitimacy for short-term advantage, eroding the very foundation that kept their authority intact. This trend hit its apex during the global 2020 pandemic. Across the board, from the World Health Organization to local physicians, experts promoted obvious falsehoods to maintain power. The betrayal was staggering. Okay, so this thing really stood out to me, and it came into my mind right now because of this concept of creating, making experts into the new priestly caste that, and instead of doing like rain dances to make it rain, they're doing their little like expertise moves with institutional trust to keep the economy inflated. I hope, or I don't mean like with inflation, but like to keep it up, to keep the economy looking like it's going really well. What I hope this is making sense. So I'll just recap that again another time because I don't think I did a very good job this first time I just read it. But if we think about how humans are naturally like religious beings, and we naturally are looking for higher powers, we naturally seek control over nature and how the world is going to happen. We want to have control. We feel the safest when we feel like we have control over how things are going. And so historically, people have always turned to a priesthood of some kind, um, again, like I mentioned, like the rain dance, like in Native American tribes, you might have like your shaman or something that's going to be like, hey, if we just do this dance, if we just have like this human sacrifice, then we'll just have control over the weather and we're just going to have much better crops, like the Aztecs sacrificing people every single day of the year because they literally believed that that was necessary to keep the sun rising every day. Like people have always done this stuff. We've always you know there's this thing in the human mind, the God-shaped hole, I guess, where we're like trying to make sense of the world, trying to control the world, trying to you know create these structures in our minds where if I just do this, then like God or nature will do that. And I'm a religious person and I do believe in things like covenants and that like you can do things like keep the commandments and get a corresponding blessing, that we are not really in control of necessarily, but I think that there are ways to play by the rules of the universe. And when you play by the rules of the universe, then things turn out good for you. Um, and so then the issue is like, how do we discover what rules of the universe we need to comply with? But human beings are always looking for answers to this. And we have this like innate openness, I think, to having priests, to having people that we think uh we want to see somebody on the tower that can like see a little bit further than us and like relay the information. As I'm like talking about it, I'm like, I guess it's like kind of like a little bit, I don't know, like this is getting a little bit meta for me because I feel like that's what I'm trying to do, like trying to see a little bit further and like relay the information. But like but we are drawn to this, okay? All of us are drawn to this. But what do you do? What about when the religion of a society is no longer God-centered? What if it is money-centered? What if it is finances-centered? And what if your priesthood is now the people that are pulling the strings of the economy? Okay, and that is what that quote really got to me. Like that's why I sent it because to my brother because I was just like, "Oh my gosh, that's like exactly what has happened. Instead of doing rain dances, we have all these like financial experts at the top of things that are negotiating different stuff and trying to keep the economy afloat and trying to create eternal growth." Okay. So, oh man, I was talking to this lady a while ago. This conversation was probably like a year or two ago, and she was talking about her investments and how they've like been growing, 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 and there has not really been like a serious dip for her, and they just like grow, 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 which is kind of great, but it's also very divorced from reality because reality comes back to Jupiter and Saturn. We have expansion and then we have contraction, and you can't just expand, 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 and never contract. We have to contract. It's how it works. Um, oh my gosh. At church, this past Sunday, I can't remember the song we were singing. I think it's called something like I Know That My Savior Loves Me or something like that. And it has you hold these notes for two full measures. So it ends up being something like 7 beats because like you like end the one measure and then like beat 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 beat. And I conduct with one hand. Sorry, I'm the music leader at church, and so I pick all the hymns and then I have to conduct all the hymns. And with my right hand, I keep the main beat, and then with my left hand, I conduct the singers, like the congregation. And when we're holding a note, then I hold out my arm as long as the note is so that they know to keep holding it. And I know that's like not normal, like at normal church. I went to church the other day and the conductor was like conducting like this. But anyways, I always hold my note. The point is that with this song, you know, we start singing this note and it keeps going and going and going and going and like I'm like, oh my gosh, like I gotta keep moving my arm, and it got to the point where I couldn't move my arm anymore. Like we're still singing and my arm is out as far as it can go, and there we are. Now we just gotta hold it there until it's time to contract and start again. And my music teacher goes to church with me and she kind of like made fun of me afterwards. She's like, your arm can only go as far as it can go. But that's exactly the point. The point is things can only expand as far as they can expand. And then they must contract. There is like it's physics, like the equal opposite reaction. You cannot expand forever. But we've had a situation where we've we've been expanding consistently more than is sustainable. Like you just it can't go on forever. You have to contract. And the problem with artificially expanding things and artificially preventing a contraction is that when you do that, um, a lot of times the contraction happens much more intensely, much more quickly, much more powerfully. Um, I just bought The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild for my new Switch. And it's a really good game, and I play it like way more than I probably should, apparently. But I have been really enjoying it. Everyone always talks about how great it is, but now I know it is actually great. And there's a little move that you can do in there where you like freeze the time for an object. But then anything that happens to that object while it's frozen, it all happens at once when it ends, when the time ends. At least that's my understanding. I'm like new at that power, so maybe I got it wrong. But I think that's how it works. That's how it's been working in my like couple minutes figuring this out. But I think we're in for that kind of thing. We've had all this expansion, and now we're starting to do a contraction. Um, but the kind of contraction that is probably necessary to match the level of expansion is probably going to be like pretty uncomfortable. And the reality is that contractions happen whether we like them or not, whether we want them to or not. Like you can't just have an economy grow and grow and grow and grow forever with no changes, with no contractions at all forever. Eventually there's going to be a contraction that is going to be outside of anybody's control, whether it's because of like weather and like completely external circumstances, or other circumstances. Like things just never last forever. That's just not how the world works. My understanding of what's going on right now, and I've talked about it on this channel before, is that the current administration has looked at the inarguable demographic future of the planet and have said, okay, there has to be a contraction just based on like reality. Are we going to have a surprise contraction that bites us all in the butt and it's a total surprise and collapses everything? Or can we control a contraction and kind of create a contraction on purpose that has a little bit more control to it? That's my understanding of like kind of what's going on right now, but it's still not fun. A word coming into my mind is that like austerity moves from Margaret Thatcher, back in she in the 80s. Now I'm like embarrassed. I can't remember off the top of my head, but contractions are not fun, but they are a necessary part of life. And if we can be controlled about our contractions, then uh, things are gonna go better for us. You think about like yoga, you do your stretches, and then at the end of it, you don't just call it quits, then you lay down and go into this kind of like fake sleep where you just rest and rest and let your body reset itself. And we do that with our with real sleep every day as well. Like if you go through a whole 24-hour period without sleeping, you're going to have a lot of problems, especially if you do it over and over. And that's like essentially what has been happening to our whole planet. This ruthless fixation on expansion, 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 expansion without a corresponding rest. It's just not sustainable. I mean, one great example of this that I always think about because I read a big thing about it probably 10 years ago. It's about stomach share and how like the stock market and obesity kind of like go hand in hand because um, if Coca-Cola wants its value of stocks to increase, 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 increase forever, what are its options? Okay. Well, it has to sell more products. That's like the fundamental thing. It has to sell more products. So what is it going to sell? Um, it can diversify the products. It can start selling Coca-Cola and water and maybe like Sprite or whatever other thing that it sells. And maybe it could break into like pretzels. Maybe it could break into like some other snacks. And so then you see Coca-Cola is like diversified and they don't just sell Coca-Cola. They sell like a whole lot of different things under this big parent company. And they have to be creating these new products to sell so that people keep buying them. But it gets more complicated than that because of stomach share. Stomach share, at least from the article that I read long ago that like burned into my brain. I have not like done more research on that in this moment, but stomach share is basically like how much food can a human being eat in a day? Because a junk food company is going to make more money off of somebody who can and will eat more food than somebody who won't or can't eat more food. Does this make sense? Like basically these publicly traded companies that want to grow and grow and grow and grow, how they have to do that is by selling a wider variety of products and then just selling a greater volume of these products. And the best way for them to do that is to find repeat customers who are increasing their stomach share, which means that if you're going to drink 100 ounces of liquid in the day, um, does Coca-Cola prefer if, 20 ounces of that is Coca-Cola or 90 ounces of that is Coca-Cola? Okay, is this making sense? Um, the thing that I had read had talked about the big problem of first world publicly traded junk food companies, basically, because they like maxed out the stomach share, and now the demographic situation is such that like each subsequent generation is kind of like getting smaller. And so if they've peaked, they've made the as big of they've made the widest variety of products they're going to make, and people there's more people willing to eat more of their products. And then if the next generation is smaller, if the next generation is less willing to eat and drink a whole bunch of those products, or if they suddenly become more health conscious and they say, I used to only drink Diet Coke, but starting today, I'm limiting it to 1 can of Diet Coke a day, and I'm just going to drink water. Like that, that kind of trend across a wide group of people, like that has to lead to a contraction. Anyway, I don't know that I'll ever find that essay again, but it was like a pretty good one because it kind of really drove home how important it is to these kind of like bigger companies that people increasingly literally increase the size of their own stomachs. When you see like really skinny people versus like much larger people, the actual stomach organ of these people, like skinny people can feel fuller on less because their stomachs are like smaller. That is my understanding, is that like if you chronically overeat, your stomach does expand to compensate for that. And so that's one reason why it's hard to cut calories, is because your stomach is used to having like to be like this full, and now you're gonna make it this full until it kind of like contracts a little bit more for perhaps a more healthy amount of food to be eaten. Anyway, um, man, but it is just a really interesting situation. So these ladies, I was talking about that one conversation with my one friend whose investment portfolio has been like growing, 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 and no real shrinks at all. Um, but I'm thinking of her and then another friend that I have who are both retired, and their investments have just like grown and grown and grown and grown. And one of my friends is just heavily, heavily invested in Coca-Cola. And she's like a true believer. She doesn't personally drink Coke, and she's not personally into those kinds of products, but she's like, they always grow. They've never let me down. My whole life, they've never let me down. Always invest in Coke. But should you always invest in Coke? Like, we've created this situation where for people's retirement funds, like that, like these ladies are in retirement and like their money is coming from being invested in, Coca-Cola as like a symbol of like all these different companies that are relying on forever eternal growth. That is not possible. I don't know. It's just a lot of interesting stuff, and I think that we're just on the very tippy beginning of of the contraction. And I think one big hint about that is, yeah, this chart, that Saturn conjunct the North Node right here at the tippy end of Pisces, with Neptune right there at 0 degrees of Aries, wrapping up a big cycle. Anytime you see something at the very tail end of Pisces, you know that there's a cycle wrapping up here. Conjunct Venus, that's about money. There is a money cycle that is being wrapped up. And Saturn is inviting a contraction. It is inviting a budget. It is inviting reality. It is inviting this concept of nothing can grow forever. And sometimes you have to sleep. Sometimes things have to go dormant. Sometimes things have to give up a lot of what they like just to survive, you know? And I think that we're just at the top of that. And I think we're going to see it more. Which kind of brings me to another thought, and then I'll let you go, because this was like much longer than I thought this was going to be like a 5-minute video, and it was not. But um, my last thought is that as things are contracting, and Neptune and then Saturn is going to be entering Aries. Sorry, Neptune and Saturn will be together in Aries, the sign of every man for himself. The thing that I've been thinking about so much is that it is so important to have your own way to make money. Okay. I'm seeing every day people losing their jobs and not knowing what to do next and looking for jobs and not finding them. You have to create your own job. That is like the big thing. If you are interested in financial security during a time of Saturnine contraction, the most, to me, the smartest way that you can handle this is by taking responsibility for your own self. I mean, apply for jobs, but also realize that you are capable of making money yourself, and the time may be now to really step forward with that. Let me know in the comments if you're interested in like a class on that. I've wanted to do a business class for a lot of years and I just like haven't, but I'm like, everyone needs it. We need to like commit to creating basically like side hustles. If you don't have a side hustle, I think you should have one. And now is the great time to do it. Now is not a great time to be afraid. Remember that recessions are where millionaires are made. This is a time of extreme opportunity. And if we can get out of fear zone and into opportunity zone, we can see the opportunities and take advantage of them. If we're going to be in fear and terror and really willing to outsource our own future to random strangers who may or may not offer us jobs, like that is not, in my opinion, the very best option. Um, one of my friends, she was looking for a job. She's an incredible artist, absolutely like mind-boggling. And she doesn't do anything with it. Like she just makes incredible art and doesn't monetize it. And I said, look, I know you don't like you're looking for a job, and I don't have a job open right now. Like I can't hire you right now, but I have 4 kids that could really use art lessons, and I would love to pay you for those art lessons. And so now I just spent like much of the morning texting with her, to sort out like when do we start and getting, sorting out the schedule for this. And that's going to make her a few $100s a month. And she's not just teaching my kids, because as soon as people heard that she was teaching, well, guess what? Everyone around here knows that she's amazing, and they were just waiting for the opportunity to pay her. Like, there are people out there probably who have been saying, I wonder why, Susie doesn't sell this. And if you sold it, they would say, oh, great, I've been waiting for that. I would love to take advantage of that. And that's exactly what's happening for my friend, where her art classes are filling up. And so good for her. And I was like doing the math on it, and I don't know if she's already making a sizable amount of money per month, like compared to what she would have made working minimum wage, But like if she like sat down and like actually marketed, she could probably fill up several classes and be making well more than she would have been making at some of these other jobs she was considering. But she just has to like put herself out there. And now that she's seeing these results. So, anyway, all that is to say, take responsibility for your own life. Um, don't lean into fear right now. Contraction is a necessary part of life, and it's not bad. Just like, I don't know about you. I love being awake, and I love being asleep. Falling asleep is really hard for me personally, but like some of us, we have you heard of revenge bedtime procrastination? We stay up later than we should, and then don't get enough sleep, and then do it again because we just want to be awake to enjoy our lives instead of like sleeping through it. But it catches up to you. Your health always suffers when you try to expand, 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 and stay awake, 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 and don't do the corresponding sleep. We are about to go into probably a corresponding sleep time economically, probably on a personal level and on a grander level. And the my big message is that it's not bad. It might feel bad, but it is necessary, it is needed, and it's part of reality. Nobody has crops that grow perfectly and abundantly every single year. It's like the story of Joseph in Egypt with 7 years of plenty and then 7 years of famine. Uh, what if we've been going through a bunch of plenty and now we need to deal with the corresponding other half of that? I don't know. You go pray about it for yourself, and ask God what you need to do to get the most out of a contraction time. Like ask God yourself if there's anything in your life where you need to contract and step back from a little bit, and be open to answers that you might not like. um, Somebody that I know said that, 40 years ago now, she was praying about what she what she should do better for her family that she was not already doing. And she got this very clear answer that they needed to have family dinner every night together, every night. And they had classes and stuff. And at that time she was kind of like, zap it yourself, like microwave something, like here's have some cereal. She was like not really on top of dinner. And many of us know having to actually cook an actual dinner that everybody gathers for at the same time every night, and like being in charge of that and like multiple sides and everything. Like I do that every night. I cook a lot. And it's a lot of work. And to go from a microwave it yourself on your own time lifestyle to a I cook for an hour every day before dinner and like plate my kids food and like have a whole dinner, like that's a really different lifestyle, like if you're not used to it. And she realized that, I mean, when she got that answer, she was like, oh no, I can't do that. That's so hard. She did do it. It changed her life. It is a tradition that has been passed on down their family lines now because she taught all of her children about how that was the answer to her prayer. And she realized that when she asked God, what could she do better that she wasn't already doing? Of course, the answer was probably going to be something hard and that she didn't want to do because or else she would already be doing it. Of course. And so that makes a lot of sense. Anyway, as we're praying about where might we need to contract a little bit, I just want to remind us that it might not be answers that we like. We might just have to deal with not liking the answer that we get, but it is what it is. Okay, that's it. That's all I have to say. Wow, thanks for listening. Be sure to come hang out on Facebook if you want Intuitive Healing with Ali Duzette. Check out my classes below. Okay, you guys are great. Have a great day.